Today, Sunday, Daf Lamed Hey, we are up to the Mishnah. We're learning about pigul. So the pigul, sometimes pigul is a generic term and sometimes it's very specific. Sometimes when you say pigul, it means I had in mind that I'm going to eat the carbon outside of its time and outside of the right place. And sometimes pigul means only chutzlas manoi. And what do you have to have in mind? You have to have in mind that you're either going to you're going to eat your part outside of the right time, or you thought that you're going to be makter, roast on the mizbech, which means what the mizbech is going to eat outside of its time. And we had our machlek before, bachilas mizbech la'adam. For example, you thought, I'm going to eat the fat that belongs on the mizbech. Or you thought that the mizbech is going to eat the meat that belongs to the person, whether that's also considered pigul or not. Do we say achil mizbech la'adam, achil adam mizbech or not? And this comes from this Mishnah here. Says the Mishnah, Hashaychel Zevach, you shecht the carbon lechol dover she'ein darker lechol. You shecht the carbon. You had in mind that you're going to eat something which is not darker. You're going to eat the fats, which is not for you to eat. Or lahakter dover she'darker lahakter. Or you're going to put on the mizbeach the meat that you're supposed to eat, and you put on the mizbeach. Then kosher, because the chum hold you don't say achilas mizbeach la'adam. You have to get it right. Get it right, just the wrong time. However, Rabbi place, Rabbi passes lechol dover shedarker lechol lahakter dover shedarker lahakter. Oh, sorry. But he passes. Rabbi passes because he holds. We do say achilas mizbech la'adam, achilas adam mizbech. Next part, we already had before as well. Lechol dover shedarker lechol. You had the right things in mind. In other words, you had in mind to eat the carbon at the wrong time, or lahakter dover shedarker lahakter, or b'pachas mekazayis. Kosher is kosher. So even, and the chiddush here is that even though we say that, every time we do a mitzvah, if it doesn't say otherwise, we say it's a kazayis. But we also learn that chatzah is usr. But when it comes to the din of pigul, in order to it to be chal, you have to have the amount of a kazayis. You don't say, oh, chatzah there has to be a kazayis. Less than kazayis, nothing happened. What happened? You're combining. I'm going to eat half of the meat that half a kazayis of the meat outside of the time, and the mizbech will get half a kazayis the wrong time. Kosher. They don't combine. It's two different kinds of things. Now comes a new thing. And the way it seems Pashup Shat in the mission is that the mefagel and the mispagel have to be able to happen at the same, have to be able to function. In other words, what's included in the pigel, if I am thinking of eating this thing outside of the right time, and it's mefagel because something I can eat, then even if I had in mind something else that I'm going to eat and I ruin the animal, that part, even though I didn't have in mind, gets schlepped along as well. Since this part could be the mefagel, if I had in mind just this part to eat in the wrong time, it ruins the whole carbon. So even if I had in mind another, for example, I had in mind to be makter a murim in 2 days from now, the whole carbon becomes possible, including the meat that I'm supposed to eat. If I eat the meat, it's possible. So the same thing is, so that's the mispagel. The meat that I'm eating is on the receiving end. So vice versa. This mispagel, if I had in mind to eat the meat the wrong time, I ruin what's going on in the mizbeach as well. So the mispagel and the mafagel have to be chal on both. That's what it seems partial from the Mishnah until the Gemara Belaza comes along and changes that. So here, Hashoichi that's Zevach, he shecht the carbon, and you had in mind lechel kazayis to eat a kazayis min oil. You can eat a kazayis of the skin. Nobody eats skin. The hide, so there's no pickle here. Or minaraitiv, or from the fats, from the gravy. Or minakifa. Kifa, Rashi says, is you have pieces of meat and pieces of gravy all mixed together. So these are things that people generally don't eat. Or mina alal. According to Rashi, alal is around the neck. There is a very hard, tough, by an animal, not by a bird, by an animal, very tough vein. You don't eat it. Umina tzamish, the bones. Minagidin, the veins. Or sinews, minakarnaim, the horns, minaklafim, the hooves. All of these things are not edible things. So if you shechted a carbon, you had in mind, you can eat that part of the carbon, but it's not an edible thing. Kosher. It's kosher because you had in mind to eat something which is not edible, and therefore there's no pigul there. Because pigul has to be something that you would normally eat, and you had in mind the wrong time. But this you don't eat. However, the ain't chayov nalem shem pigul. But let's say, so that's that's called mafagel, right? You try to mafagel the animal through thinking about the hide. It doesn't ruin the animal. What about the other way around? You thought I'm going to eat this animal 2 days from now, or tomorrow if it's a chattas, right? It's mafagel animal. What happens? But I didn't eat the animal. So when you chayiv karis, when you eat, what happens? I don't eat the animal, but I eat the oil itself. It's not mafagel. It's not mispagel. It's not included in the pigul because it's not food. So if I ate the hide of the animal, I ate the bones of the animal, I ate the horn, the hooves of the animal, even though this animal is a pigul animal, because I had in mind I'm going to eat this, my part of the animal in the wrong time, even though, and there's a chalois of a pigul of the animal, but it doesn't spread to these parts because it's not edible. So these parts are not mifagel, nor are they mispagel. They don't get dragged along with the pigul of the rest of the animal. So ain't chayavim should pigul because it's not really food, nor noiser because it's not really food, or tummy. If you ate it with tummy, again, this is not really considered food. Okay. Sheiches hamukdashin. What happened? You shecht a female animal, which normally is a shlamim or a chatas, not an oil, because oil is close in the Torah, it has to be zacher. But sheiches hamukdashin lechol to eat shalil. You said you're going to eat what? I'm going to eat the fetus. Oy shilya. I'm going to eat the sack. Again. So the way Rashi learns is it's not really part of the animal. So bachutz, I'll eat it outside. Is loy pigul. The animal does not become pigul. See, the example is bachutz, and we use the word pigul. Sometimes pigul is a generic term. It's a generic term. So it's again, if you had in mind something which is not really eaten, it's not, people don't generally eat that, the sack or the fetus, they don't generally eat it. So therefore, it's not pigul. What Rashi learns in the Mishnah, it's not really part of the carbon. This is outside of the carbon. Uba lav yerechima. Rashi gets involved in the machlekes. Others don't do with that. As a fact, Rashi later learns don't do with that. It's to do with, it's not something you eat. So therefore, just like the oil in the Mishnah, it's not something you eat. So therefore, it's not pigul. Then he says, but it doesn't say here that if the animal became pigul and you ate that, if you're chayiv or not chayiv. Important. We'll see more later. Okay, so you have this dove, and you go ahead and you do malika, that's what you're supposed to do. And you had in mind, lechel beya and bechutz. You can eat beya and bechutz. You can eat the eggs outside. Eggs are not part of the bird. It's not. It doesn't mefagel the bird. Loi pigel. It doesn't mefagel the bird. Chol mukdashin. You had in mind that the milk of that's found in the udder, you can eat the wrong time. Again, it's extraneous to the animal, so it's not mefagel the animal. And here he says, and these things here, that if the bird did become pigul, or if the animal did become pigul, and you drank the milk or you ate the eggs, these are mamish chitzonius. These are mamish not part of the animal, so you're not chayiv because of pigul. It's not even the spagul. So interesting. So every case in the Mishnah we talk about both sides, whether you had in mind that to ruin the animal, or you had in mind the animal and it came ruined. What happens with that? Except in the case of Shalil and Shilya. But says the Gemara, says, I want you to know that you can have a situation where it's not mefagel, but it's nispagel. What do you mean? Pigul bezevach, if the animal itself became pigul, let's say you had in mind that the animal, you're going to eat in the wrong zman, the animal becomes pigul, nispagel hashalil. If you had in mind the Shalil or the Shilya, it doesn't ruin the animal. But if you had in mind the animal and became pigul, and now you eat the Shalil and the Shilya, you're chayiv for, if you think. No, but it's shaykh to be nispagel even though you're not mifagel. That's his chiddush. But this is not Moed Rabbelos. It's not done. People say nispagel hashalil, but Shalil loy nispagel hazeva. But if you had in mind the Shalil, it doesn't ruin the carbon. Pigel ba'ola. We're talking now about by a bird. By a bird, the olo is edible. It's much softer than by an animal. An animal, we said before in the Mishnah, it's not food, but by a bird, it's softer. So pigel ba'olol, if you had in mind by the olol, which is edible, and you had in mind pigel by a bird, nispagla mura, the crop where it collects all the food, the thing that's underneath that hangs there, a little sack by the bird, collects all the food, even though it's not really part of the animal, it becomes nispagla. If you had in mind mura, like nispagla olol. So that's the principle is you can have things which are eaten and not mamish food, but it's not, nobody eats it. It's sort of in between. It cannot be mafagel, the main animal, but it can be dragged along in the nispagel. Pigel be'emurin nispagel parim. So if you were mafagel the emurin, we're now talking about parim that are done outside parim hanisrafim. Parim hanisrafim, they get like a par of a kohen god that did an aveda. They get burnt outside of the Beis Hamikdash. They get burnt outside of the Beis Hamikdash. So he says here, and the pigul be'emurin, but the fats get agonos be'ech. So if you had in mind that the emurin should be the wrong place, this pagul parim, then the animal itself, even though you're not supposed to eat it at all, but if you ate it, it's pigul. But the parim, if you had in mind the meat of the animal to eat it tomorrow, loin is pagul emurin. You know why? Because the animal isn't eaten at all. It can get burnt. So it's not something that's eaten. So in fact, let's say there's a proof to him. What it says. There's a machlekes b'chlal by parim and esrafim if there is pigul, because according to the Chachamim, there's no pigul by parim and esrafim. Why? Because the blood is sprinkled on the inner mizbeach. Where do you learn that the holy in pigul? Well, you're also we have a yom shlishi by karm shlamim. Karm shlamim is sprinkled on the outside mizbeach. So according to Rab Shimon, as long as you have zrik, it's close enough to shlamim. So therefore, it's pigul even when you sprinkled on the inner mizbeach. According to Chum has to be exactly like shlamim, only if you're zoidik on the outside mizbeach, but a par of a kohen gadol where you sprinkle, if you did a chata, you did it on the inner mizbeach, there's no pigul at all. But v'shavin, everyone agrees. She'imchishev ba'achilas parim. Everyone agrees that if you thought that you're going to eat the meat of the parim, uv'sreifasan, and you thought that you're going to burn it on the mizbeach, lo aseleklum. Not only Chum even Rav Shimon. What do you mean? But you do burn mizbeach. Yeah, but it's not called burning. Burning means you're getting rid of it. We call it achilus mizbech. The parts of the carbon that have to go on the mizbech is called, as Rashi says, achilus mizbech. You said sreifasan. Sreifasan is when you get rid of it. There's no sreifasan at all. So therefore, if you have in mind an activity which is not existent, everyone is made. There's no pickle there. My love. So what's it coming to be shoyl? But what about hachashiv be'emurim? But if you thought about the fats. On the mizbech, you do the wrong day, which is pigul. Sounds like nispaglu parim. It tells you that the parim don't get nispaglu, but in that case, it would be nispaglu. Araya to Rab Shimon, even though if you had in mind the parim, the meat of the animal which has to be burned and eaten, is not nefagel the animal, but it's on the receiving end. We must say, no. Who told you to be medayik that the meat is on the receiving end? All we're talking about the murin. If you thought about the murin becomes nispaglu, but the parim. No, so there's no raya to him. So Gemara is going to go back and forth now to bring a raya. That's a kasha, bring a raya to Rabbi Elazar's chiddush. Toshma, come in here. Parim hanisrafim, v'seidim hanisrafim. These animals that have to be burnt outside the base of Mikdash. Moilin behen. When do we say that the me'ilah start that belong to Hegdish? Meshahukdishu. The moment that you makdish it, it becomes Hegdishes. Nishchetu. Okay, so therefore, if you use it for your own good, you're moil. That's it. But nishchetu, once you shechted it, it goes up a step, and that is huchshuli pasel betful yoim uvemechusik kippurim. Once you shechted it, if a tful yoim, somebody already went to the mikveh, he has to wait till sunset, or mechusik kippurim, he has to wait for bringing his kabbanis. If they touch this animal, it becomes tamei, because now it became a kodesh, the next step up. Ubeli, but then it says one more. Ubelina, once you shechted, if you leave it overnight, you chayiv lina. That's nicer. So the Gemara right now thinks pigul is linked to noiser. We're lamed hey on the base in the very top of the page. Pigul is linked to noiser. We had over here Rabbi Elazar came along and just quickly made a chiddush here that if you have in mind not to eat the animal, the carbon at the wrong times, then not only so the animal become what do you call pigul, but even if you eat parts of the animal that normally are not eaten or are eaten, but very few people eat it, for example, the embryo, the fetus or the sac, it's included in the pigul. Even though the other way around, if you had in mind that you can eat the fetus outside the right time, it doesn't ruin the animal because it's really ancillary to the animal, it's not part of the animal, but it can be on the receiving end because some people eat it. If nobody eats it, then don't talk about it. The Mishnah said clearly nothing happens. It's not food. But this is food. Some people eat it. So therefore, it's considered as to drag along. So now we're asking a question. It says that here that these parim that have to get burnt for kohen gadol brings a power for bringing a chatas. So he has to get burnt outside the base of Mikdash. The moment that you made it sacrosanct, you consecrated it, and then if you use it for your own purpose, you're stealing. But the moment you shechted it, then it becomes like a full carbon. That if a Talmudic person touches it, ruins it. It's full yaim. Somebody went in mikveh, but he didn't bring his kabbanas, chusuk purim, he ruins it. And then he says it's also lina if you leave it overnight. Now, right now we think that pigul is an extension of lina. That if you leave it overnight, it becomes possible because it's nicer. Then if you thought about it, it also becomes possible. That's what pigul is. So my love lina's basar. So clearly from here, shmamina. What do we see clearly from here? Migui the pastor belina, pastor machshava. That the meat of the animal, even though it has to get burnt, so nobody eats it because it has to get burnt. Still, it's included in the pigul because it's included in the lina. Someone says, no. Who said? Lie lina say murim. Only it means if you left it over, but there's no. Machshava pigul will not affect the party. It's not food. Why not food? Because you're not allowed to eat it. But if you did leave it, you're chayiv lina. One thing alone do is another. So you say, how can you say that? How many times safe? It says in the safer, cool and moil and behen. All of these cases, you're moil, you consider stealing. Al base hadeshen, while it's still sitting on the place over there where all the ashes are. Achi yutach, and you put it on the mizbeach to burn. Achi yutach habasa, until the meat breaks apart and falls, becomes all burnt and everything else. So miklal, the reisha linas basa. You said we're talking about. You said we're talking about linas emurin. We're not talking about the basa taka. There's no pigul by the meat of the animal because you're not allowed to eat, nor is the lina because it's not food. Because you're not allowed to eat it. No, even though if actually it is food, but the halacha say not allowed to eat it, it's not allowed to eat it. It says there's lina. That's talking about the fats. So the Gemara Haki we're talking about the fats. It continues talking about the meat, and it says there that you're not you still consider stealing until the meat gets burnt. So we're talking about meat. So when we say lina, what are we talking about? The meat of the animal, not just the fats of the animal. Says the Gemara, why? Meat idiot. Who told you that everything's about meat? Every case, wherever it's shy. In the first part, when it says lina, it's talking about the fats, but because there's no lina by the meat, nor is the pigul, and the sefer basa. Okay. We try to bring a proof or we reject it. Now the world asks a question. Rabbi asks a question. It says the following. The followings do not cause the animal to become pigul, nor if the animal became pigul, are they included? For example, the wool that's on the head of the sheep, or sar shebezaken, the beard, or shebezaken tiyashim of the goats of the older sheep over there, so they also are not included. The hide, the gravy, the akifa we had before, the pieces of meat mixed with the gravy, the olol, and the olol we had before, that's the vein around the neck, the hamura and the crop, vatzamas, the bones, the hagidin, the veins, the karnaim, the horns, the chlofim and the hooves, the shlil, the shilya. It says it clearly shlil and shilya. That's the fetus and the sac. The cholav hamugdash, in the milk of the females, and ubeye toiden, and the eggs from the doves. Loy mifaglin, the loy mispaglin. They cannot cause the animal to become pigul, nor are they included in the pigul animal. If the animal became pigul, you will not be over pigul if he ate including the fetus. So it's clearly here, you, Rabbi Loza, came along and said that even though the fetus cannot make the animal into a pigul, but if the animal became pigul, the fetus is included in that pigul. So it's clearly here that we're talking about the shilya as well, and it says over here that they're not mefagul and spagul, and then it says that if ein chayav pigul means if the animal became pigul and you ate it, there's no isur or noiser or tummy. And then it's a mile and mechutz potter. And if you take it outside your potter, because it's not food. My lab, loy mefaglin, loy mefaglin, loy mespaglin, take it literally means loy mefaglin zabach. If you had in mind to eat the shilya outside, it doesn't ruin the carbon. Or loy mespaglin machazabach. If the animal became a thing, doesn't ruin if you ate the shilya, you're not part of the pigul. Pasha Rabbi Lazar. So he says no. Loy mefaglin es hazevach. That's not what it means at all. When it says mefaglin, it means it cannot ruin the carbon. And what you know, loy mispaglin means it cannot ruin itself. If you had in mind, I won't eat the shilya today, but I'll eat it tomorrow. So first of all, the animal itself stays kosher. That's part number one. Loy mefaglin is something else. The loy mispaglin and the shilya itself also does not become pigul. That's what it means. Not that if the animal itself became pigul, the shilya is mutter. That's not what we're talking about here. If we had it self in mind, it doesn't become pigul. So the next line says, cool on all of them. It wraps it up. It says, oh, Sulamali, you already said that. You started off saying here that, these are not mefagul. That's how the mission started off. And then you say, weiter, you say, why repeat it? Obviously, it's telling you a new din. That even if the animal became pigul, it doesn't transfer to the shilya. So the Gemara said, are you going to be so medayik? Let me ask you a question. Let's say you're right. Well, the time according to you, ain't chayav pigul hosulamli. So what's the next line? And you're not chayav for pigul. You already told me that if the animal became pigul, because that's twice if you ate the shilya, if you ate the fetus, you're not over. So why does it say again you're not chayav because of pigul? Why is it repeated again? You're going to tell me, I did the boy lemistin nice of tummy. I want to teach you this new dinim, which we didn't mention before, leftover or tummy. It's not really food, and therefore you're not chayiv. Ton of pigul. I did the boy lemistin because you want to teach you the next din, and if you take it outside, you're not chayiv. Repeats again that law, proves nothing. But I say what it means is that if you had in mind the shilya to eat the wrong time, and you ate the shilya the wrong time, you're not over. But if you had in mind the animal to eat the wrong time, and it became pigul, the shilya becomes us as well. Rava said, I'll prove from my Mishnah. In fact, like Rabbi Lazar. Why? Because I told you before, I pointed out that every single case it talks about that if you had that in mind, it doesn't ruin the animal. And if you had the animal in mind, it doesn't ruin that. It says you're not chayiv for pigul. The only case it doesn't say that is by shalil and shilya. Over there it says that if you had in mind by the shilil that you're not going to eat the animal with nothing. But it doesn't say if you had in mind the animal, what's the din with the shilya. We learned, if you had shechted and you had in mind to eat the shilya the wrong time, outside, let pigul. And then it goes on from Michael. Then it says when it says you're not chayiv if it's on the receiving end, only in case of milk and eggs. It sounds like, but in the middle case there of the shilya, what happens if the animal became pigul and you ate the shilya? It would be chayiv pigul. What if you had in mind the shilya and you boil him? That's no good. But if you had in mind the animal that you be the wrong time, then it passes on to the shil as well. Sramina. Tanhas, we learned over there, Ubali Mumin. We learned over there, we said over there that anything you put in Mizbech, once it goes up there, even though it's possible, you take it down. What about a Balmum? If an animal had a mum and you put it on Mizbech, you take it down. The Chacham say, yes, that's different, you take it down. And Rabbi Kiva says no. But Rabbi Kiva machshir. Rabbi Kiva said, he said, you know what? Leave it on the Mizbech. What kind of mum? A mum that happened later, like a cataract. And sorry, before it later. Only those mumim which in other places are not a mum. For example, could buy a bird. When is a bird possible? Only if it's missing an aver, an entire limb, as we'll learn later. But to buy an animal, not a limb, but even a cataract, anything is possible. But, okay, so therefore, that's what Rabbi Kiva says, that these kind of mumim which are kosher by bird. No, if an aver is missing, it's different. But if it's only like a cataract, these kind of things by bird is kosher, or any mum actually, as long as it's not a limb missing, as Teza says, it's kosher. And Rabbi Kiva said you're allowed to use it. But then one more proviso. But who should cut the Magdesh of the mumma? When you were makted, the animal didn't have the mumya. If you already had the mum, then it didn't become hegdish in the first place. It's only kedusha dummy, not kedusha good. Only the value became kaddish, not the animal. So it comes along. Rabbi says, "Rabbi Kiva is moide, but oilas nekeva. An oila had to be a male. Carbon oila has to be a male." The Torah says zocha zocha every time. What happens? You made it a female. Rabbi Kiva is moide. You have to take it down. Why? Because there the mum took place before you made a kaddish. It was a female from birth. So therefore, the mum became before kaddish. The commander called the mum like dummy, as if the mum came first. So it must be a very simple question. It says here, it said we had if you take this shilya and you take it outside, which you're not allowed to, it's potter, you are potter. Why? Because it's not really part of the animal. But if you took part of the mother, and we're talking about an oila, chayiv. But you just said that a mother, even according to Rabbi Kiva, is a mum before the hegdish, nothing happened. It only be by a female. How can you have a shul? Only if a female. That what is shaykh to carbon is Hamani Rabbi Kiva. So this is Rabbi Kiva. Who is this? Says the Gemara. Who said you're making the yukim? He asked me questions. I can give you another inference. It follows. But this is how you should read. The fats of the mother, which belongs on the mizbech, and you took it out. Chayiv. And what do you mean the fats of the mother? Which carbon do you only have fats? Carbon shlami, carbon chata. Who told you about an oila? You thought we're talking about an oila here, because that's where you're going to learn a bit about making the mizbech. No, we're talking about a carbon that the only part of the carbon goes on the mizbech is the fats. I think most of them are tani from all of them. So we said the iman dumi did who is similar to the other ones. El ema hamaylev. Add a word in here that not if you, because the shilya went outside. If you took part of the shilya outside, which part? The fats of the shilya. We're talking about carbon shlamim, a carbon chatas. So these are only the fats going on the bech. If you take it outside potter, but iman, if you took it from the mother and my shlamim is in the keva, or chatas is in the keva, iman chayiv, then you chayiv. We'll just do the Mishnah. We learned the whole time, piglet, you're going to eat the blood outside or whatever it is. What happened? You shechted the animal, and we had it before. We had this review of Rabbi Yehuda before. that you shechted the animal, you're not going to do anything. You're not going to spray it the wrong day, or you're not going to eat it the wrong day. I'm shechting the animal. I have no intention of anything with the blood. Laniach, oy a murav. I'll leave it till tomorrow. Do nothing with it. Not I'm going to eat it tomorrow. Just do nothing with it. Rabbi Yehuda says that's possible also because you're working with the blood. Chacham says only if you're going to eat it, not if you're going to leave it there, do nothing. What about that we had before? I sprinkled, I shechted the animal, having in mind, or the blood or that I am going to place the blood on the ramp, which is the wrong place, or shaloi keneged how you say the wrong part of the mizbeach. Or litin is hanitnim lemailo lematla nitin lematla lemailo. I plan to sprinkle the blood on the mizbeach, but the wrong parts. I remember we had a whole machleki before. Is it still something or not? And then we had a different way of looking at Mishnah. I had in mind that was inside and outside. That outside out of the to put an in the I had in mind that it'll be eaten by people at Tamei, that it should be brought up by people who are Tamei, Shechlu Arelim, that people who are disqualified people. Somebody wasn't Gemalut, Shekrivu Arelim, or that someone like Gemal should bring it up on the Mizbeach, L'Shabbat at some of the Pesach. That you're going to break. I'm checking it in order to break the bones. You're not allowed to. Or lechele menu no, either when it's still have raw. La'arev dame bedam apsula plant and mix the blood with the other blood which is a puzzle. All of these are kosher because pigul is very limited. She'ein machsheva b'chshava ele b'chutzes man b'chutzes. The only thoughts are that you are going to eat it outside the right time, but not other psulim or outside the right place. Except one more. We said if you had a korban pesach and chatzah shaloi lishma ruins the korban, yeah, that in mind. It's also pigul. Okay, we'll stop over here and we'll continue tomorrow.